Welcome to Marine Tech Talk, a podcast about how Teledyne Marine's innovative technologies are enabling scientific discoveries and commercial tasks in the world's oceans and waterways. In this episode of the podcast, we're joined by Brian Bradley, a faculty member of Cape Fear Community College's Marine Technology program in Wilmington, North Carolina. Cape Fear Community College employs a range of equipment from Teledyne Marine in their program, and Brian teaches hydrographic surveying, marine instrumentation, and marine data processing. He also serves as an at-sea instructor for 3 of the 5 oceanographic training cruises that students are required to complete during their course of study. Brian talks about the equipment and the program, and how the combination of the students' classroom and on-water experiences creates a much faster and easier transition to the workplace after graduation. Now, here's our guest, Brian Bradley, with the host of Marine Tech Talk, Melissa Rossi.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. I'm here with Brian Bradley, who is the Marine Technology Instructor at Cape Fear Community College in Wilmington, North Carolina. Hey, Brian, thanks for joining me on the show today. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you? Glad to be here.
Doing great. Glad to have you too. Brian, can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and the Marine Technology program at Cape Fear Community College?
Well, my name is Brian Bradley. I'm one of the Marine Technology instructors here in Cape Fear Community College in Wilmington, North Carolina. The classes I teach are the hydrographic survey, marine cartography classes, marine data processing, as well as marine instrumentation. I've been here about 6 years. I came out of the industry. I was in the industry for about 13 years as a hydrographic survey technician and a field engineer before coming here in 2014.
Great. How long has that program been running at Cape Fear?
We've been around for over 50 years. I don't know the exact start date, but I believe we began sometime in the late 50s or the early 60s.
Wow, so that's really a well-established program.
Oh, I was going to say we're one of the longest-running programs that exist here at the college.
I know that you and I are having this discussion today because Cape Fear uses quite a bit of Teledyne equipment on their vessels and in their training. Can you tell me a bit about what equipment you have and how it's used in that training?
Sure. So one of the latest pieces of gear that we've received recently was the Teledyne Z-boat that has the CD100 dual frequency fathometer on it. We also have the Teledyne Seabotics ROV, the LBV 300. And then we have several other pieces of gear. We have several dual frequency and single beam Odom CV fathometers, as well as a Teledyne ADCP. I think that's most of what we have as Teledyne equipment.
Okay. How is that equipment used by the students?
So our classes are, especially the classes that I teach, the focus is a practical application, how we could get students trained for a industry type job where they can enter the field and know exactly how to set up that gear, how to calibrate that gear, deploy it, collect data, and then process it. So it's a hands-on, at sea, on the water type program that students are getting trained to use this gear in.
Okay. So what size are those classes? I mean, does everyone really have ample time for hands-on experience?
So in a typical year, we have as many as 20 students per class. This year's a little bit different. Every student gets the same amount of time, hands-on time with the gear throughout their time here.
Okay. What do you think that the students like best about the program?
What I hear from a lot of the students that they like best is, for one, how prepared they are when they enter the field in these positions, as well as it's not a traditional classroom setting. It's very dynamic. We're very much an outside, on the river, in the boats kind of classroom where it's more real world like. And so when students enter the industry, the response we get back is they feel like their training has prepared them for exactly what they're going to be experiencing on the first day of the job.
Aside from the equipment, you were talking about your facilities and some of the other resources that you have. What are the other resources that you have at the college?
Well, one thing that sets us up really good is we're located right on the river, on the Cape Fear River here in downtown Wilmington. And at our dock, we have several vessels that are always part of the students' curriculum. We have our 135-foot research vessel, the RV Cape Hatteras, that has the latest and greatest equipment that we could put on it, that students are required to sail on it for 32 days in different trips each semester, where a lot of the gear that I've already talked about, they deploy and use offshore. And then we have our 52-foot catamaran that is at the dock ready to go as well, which students use the same gear that they would use offshore. They would use inshore on the river right here behind their classroom.
Okay. You sent me some great photos, by the way. So you sent me a bunch of photos of the students in training and using bits of the equipment. There was one great photo that actually wasn't with the equipment, but they all looked like they were in like red Gumby suits jumping over the edge of the boat. Was that survival training of some sort?
So we try to prepare students for all types of jobs in all types of industries. And part of the boat handling and seamanship class, not only are they required to learn how to operate a vessel, how to dock a vessel, but they're also provided training in what to do in survival type situations, where if they have to get out of a vessel at sea, they have to don what we call a Gumby suit, a survival suit, that they've had that experience and they know what it's like. So we do that in the middle of the winter. Sometime in December, we take them out on the river and suit them up and tell them, get in.
I know a couple of them looked a little dubious going over the edge there, but the ones that were in the water actually looked quite happy. So oddly enough.
Yeah. It's a very weird experience for them to do for the very first time, but usually it's all smiles when they get out.
Yeah, it looked that way. And it actually, there were some great photos too, which some of them the listeners will be able to see on our website once we do actually publish the podcast here. But there were students collaborating with the Z-boat. Looked like they were some were in training, some were doing some workshop work with the boat. So it looked like a very good collaborative environment.
When we first got the Z-boat, V came down and actually, instead of just taking me out alone, he agreed to participate in our hydrographic survey class. So he was here for 2 or 3 days. We have a couple of different cohorts, senior cohorts, and he stuck around for both those cohorts to go out into the field with them and explain to them how to use the Z-boat, as well as what life is like, what their life is going to be like when they get out of here. So it wasn't just a training session. It was also a moment where students could meet someone from the industry and spend a few minutes with them to ask their own questions and get some of their own answers from someone who's out in the field.
Oh, that's great. I noticed on your website that there's a number of careers that students typically do who are graduating from your marine technology program in general. What types of careers might those be?
There's several different directions. We focus a lot on the technology and the surveying positions, but they can also pursue fisheries related jobs as well as water analysis type jobs. However, the majority of our graduates lately have been getting a lot of jobs with NOAA as survey techs on their offshore vessels, as well as the Army Corps of Engineers as nearshore and inshore survey techs. And then there's been companies like Fugro, Oceaneering, and TerraSun, who's picked up several of our graduates in the last few years who are working offshore supporting the big energy projects, mostly, it seems lately in the Northeast. And then there's the dredging contractors, Weeks Marine, as well as Norfolk Dredging and even Great Lakes Dredging Dockers picked up our students to work as field engineers in their daily operations out, dredging navigable waterways and in beach nourishment projects. And then there's been quite a few smaller companies that support navigation, channel, and coastal engineering projects, like Hagen O'Brien Associates, Geodynamics, McKim & Creed, and TI Coastal locally here, who have picked up our graduates to also support those industries.
Yeah, that's great. So that sounds like your program really can provide for students a pretty diverse set of careers they can go out into after they graduate. If I'm a student considering a career in marine technology, why should I consider Cape Fear Community College?
There's one thing we have that a lot of schools don't have, and that's our 135-foot research vessel that we use, the RV Cape Hatteras. Every student's required to sail on the vessel for 32 days before they finish here. And that sets us apart. We're a 2-year program, so we're able to get students graduated and employed in a shorter amount of time. However, we also provide them that floating classroom, that at-sea experience that students have to sail and work aboard in a 24-hour-a-day setting that prepares them for an industry, whether it be the dredging side of things or the offshore shipboard side of things. They learned how to safely live and work aboard these vessels, and I think that's really a key point in our program.
Okay. So conversely, I know you just mentioned a bunch of different companies and organizations that have hired students out of your program. If I'm an employer and I'm looking for a survey technician or some sort of marine technician, why would I want to consider hiring a graduate from your program?
Our graduates, when they finish here, they've used a lot of different types of sonar application or sonar acquisition gear, whether it be side scan, sub-bottom, multi-beam, single-beam, dual-frequency sonars, as well as the latest GPS technology we could get our hands on. Not only they've used that, they've used it in a real-world setting where we put them in situations that would be identical to what they would experience in the field. And it's not only myself, but we have a fantastic team here that makes up the marine technology program that prepares our graduates for their first day on the job. So not only are they experienced with the gear that they're going to be seeing in the field, they've been given very similar experiences to what a day-to-day life would be like when they actually arrive their first day on the job. So if there was someone looking to hire our graduates, I would say that they can have a lot of confidence that the piece of equipment that you put in front of them or the situation that you put them into, that they're going to feel comfortable and confident and have knowledge of what's going on. So the training of these students, when you first take them on in your company, you won't have to train them. I feel like you wouldn't have to train them as much because they've been there and they've had those experiences.
Great. So they've got some real world experience, even though they haven't actually been out working for a company. Well, thanks, Brian. You know, the program there sounds great. And hopefully today's podcast will help lead some more future marine technicians to your school.
I hope so.
All right. Thank you so much for your time today. Great talking to you.
You're welcome. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks for listening to the Marine Tech Talk podcast. For more information on the programs offered at Cape Fear Community College, you can log on to their website at www.cfcc.edu. We'll also put links to the school's Twitter and Facebook handles in the notes for this episode. If you like this podcast, please make sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're hearing this show. That way, you'll never miss an episode. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you again next time.